Just before we get started with the video today, weird pronunciations follow. I'm doing my best, as always. If you want to have a go at me, as always, use the comments. The creationism versus evolution battle still rages in many schools worldwide. However, the problem with teaching creationism is that, well, there are a lot of creationist ideas out there. You can't just teach the Christian version, you need to introduce kids to all of the tales, right? That's the only way they could ever hope to make a balanced, educated decision regarding what they believe in, right? The Aztecs, Egyptians, and various other ancient civilizations had their own stories of how the world and humanity came into existence, and nobody has ever proven them wrong. And in the video today, we're going to check them all out. Number 10. The Chinese Egg of Life. It has been traditionally shown that the Chinese, like others, have multiple myths about creation. However, the most popular story involves a black egg and a man with a broad axe collaborating to create our world. According to this myth, in the beginning, heaven and earth were closer than a pedophile and a playground. In fact, they were so close that they fused together to form one gloomy mass of blackness. In this gloomy thing that was described as a black egg, a man named Pangu resided there for millennia upon millennia. One day, Pangu, who presumably had got bored of this lifestyle, smashed out of the egg with a broadaxe. While we'd like to assume he decided to have it scrambled, Pangu actually had greater plans than that. Existing in between the two halves of the egg, he grew to an enormous size of about 30,000 miles, or approximately the distance between heaven and earth, apparently. Eventually, he died and decayed, but did so in a more badass way than any of us ever will. His voice transformed into thunder, his skin and bones made up the earth and its various minerals, and his head, well, that transformed into outer space. Number 9. The Slavic Spies. The Slavs, like many other cultures, have several similar stories about how the world was created. However, they all have the same base. The myths revolve around a theme of God versus the devil. One of the most prominent ones involves a god called Beelzebub, who got bored of eternal nothingness. Deciding to amuse himself with the antics of things like Justin Bieber, he created the earth by sending his shadow Chernabog to get dirt. Chernabog was proud and selfish and attempted to kill Beelzebub by drowning him. Being a god and although Beelzebub, he was simply not fazed and blessed the land happily. He was unable to stop the land from growing though, so he dispatched an expedition to spy on Chernabog, who summoned a goat and then rode it, intending to have a serious discussion. However, this had the effect of inadvertently causing the team to burst into laughter. Chernabog got pissed off and refused to speak with him. Meanwhile, Beelzebub had sent a bee to spy on Chernabog, who revealed that the only way to stop the earth was to make a cross pointing to all corners of the earth and say, "Enough." The bee overheard, but Chernabog was not pleased. He cursed whoever sent the bee to eat the bee's shit. Beelzebub, pleased with the information he had received, caused the bee to have the sweetest shit ever, which is honey. While this story doesn't address humans directly, it provides a fun way to visualize the birth of the universe, not to mention a neat explanation for why honey is quite so delicious. Number 8. Armenian Duality. Similar to Slavic myths, Armenian mythology also revolves around a duality. In this case, the two most popular versions of the myth juxtapose masculinity and femininity. The myths don't explain how the world is created per se, but they do tell us how the world runs and expose the men behind the curtain. Heaven and earth were, for starters, said to be husband and wife who were separated by a sea. Heaven was said to be a city, and earth was said to rest upon the horns of a bull whose head shaking would cause earthquakes. An alternative myth suggested that the earth rested in water, circled by a leviathan who tried to catch its own tail. The leviathan is said to be the one causing earthquakes, and the world would apparently end if the leviathan ever caught its own tail. Number 7. The giant Nordic ice giant. The Norse myths quite predictably reflect their culture. The world, in this case, was created from the corpse of a giant snowman, a frost giant called Ymir. Previously, in the ancient times when the world was young, there were two worlds, Muspel and Niflheim, which were respectively the realms of fire and heat and ice and cold. Where the heat met the cold, there was a chasm called the Ginnungagap. There, they created Ymir, the frost giant. Ymir then sweated out a man and a woman from his left arm, which we imagine was probably quite awkward and painful. The man was called Buri, and he had a son and sired Odin, Val, and V, who, as a triad, ruled the heavens. Odin and his brothers slew Ymir and took his body to the chasm and used it to build our world. His blood was used for the oceans and the seas, and his skull was used to create the sky. His bones were then crushed and they make up rocks and pebbles. His brains, they formed the clouds. Later, Odin and his brothers found 2 trees which they used to create both man and woman. The man's name was Ash and the woman's name was Elm, and together they raised Pokemon and lived happily ever after. But maybe that's the wrong Ash. Number 6. Greco-Roman Ball-Rolling Gaia. Greek mythology portrayed the world at the beginning as shapeless and formless. There was chaos everywhere, and neither the sun nor the moon existed. Then a god reached down and resolved this conflict by organizing all things. He separated heat from cold and mist from clear air. He then shaped Earth by rolling it into a ball and separating it into 5 zones. The middle zone was too hot and the 2 outer zones were too cold, so he made 2 regions that were, just like Goldilocks' porridge, just right. Man was created from divine seed of unnamed god, possibly Zeus, as 2-faced, round-bodied creatures which would eventually be split in 2. Number 5. The Shadowsexual Egyptian God. In the beginning, there was Nu, an ocean which can be said to symbolize chaos and disorder. This was all that existed until Atum came out of the watery mass. Atum, being the badass god that he is, created himself using his own will and thoughts alone. He then created a hill to stand on, as there was no place to stand in all of the watery chaos. Atum created more gods, since he was alone, by having sex with his shadow, who we're guessing always wanted to keep the lights on. He gave birth to Shu and Tefnut by spitting and vomiting them out. Shu represents air and life, while Tefnut represents moisture and order. At some point, Shu and Tefnut became lost in Nu, and upon Atum's reunion with them, he wept manly tears. These tears were so manly, in fact, they hit the ground, inseminated it, and produced people. Shu and Tefnut then gave birth to Geb and Nut, the earth and the sky. In some versions, Atum is replaced by Ra, who takes the form of the scarab god. The base story, however, it remains the same. Number 4. Yoruban chickens and the sands of life. The Yoruba of West Africa have their own creation myth as well. There exists a high god, Olorun, who decided to one day organize the earth, which was a vast wasteland. In some versions, Oduduwa is the one he actually sends, while in others he merely tags along for the ride. However, Obatala here gets dragged into a party, and Oduduwa continues the mission, armed with a chicken and a calabash of sand. Oduduwa drops the sand and lets the chicken spread it around. This part of the world is then named the Ife or Ife. Obatala came down later and he created people. However, he was drunk, so he created some people with deformities. This apparently explains why some people are born deformed. When he came out of his haze, he later set about his task properly and finished everything up. Some variations have Oduduwa merely bringing the Yoruba people down from the heaven and ruling over them as their king. Number 3. Aztec War Among Gods. Aztecs believed that at the beginning of the world there existed a great dark void with a great god. This god's name was Omatakuti, and he apparently watched over everything. This god was a contradiction because he was both male and female, good and evil, hot and cold, yes and no, in and out, up and down, black and white, and wrong and right. He then gave birth to 4 smaller gods, which have names that are so ridiculously hard to pronounce I'm not even going to try, and then they created other gods who did things like create giants, water, fish, and even more gods. To create the sun, Tezcatlipoca sacrificed himself. However, he got into a battle with Quetzalcoatl, who knocked him from the sky. Quetzalcoatl later became the sun and created humanity, who survived at that time by feeding on nuts. Tezcatlipoca, however, corrupted the humans and turned them into monkeys, upon which Quetzalcoatl summoned a hurricane and blew them all away. Finally, these 2 gods stopped their battles and they created a fresh batch of humans who they called the Aztecs. Number 2. Japanese Earth Cauldron. In Japanese myths, the world began as, you guessed it, a muddy, chaotic ocean. However, from the ocean out came a reed which gave rise to many gods. These gods were known as I'm just gonna have to guess the pronunciation on this one, I tried looking it up, couldn't find anything, but maybe the Kotoa Matasukami, who are never mentioned again as they promptly go into hiding, and that's a good thing because I don't want to have to pronounce them again. Many other gods arose, including Izanami and Izanagi, who eventually went on to stir the earth until a curdled landmass formed. And of course, this landmass, well, that was called Japan. Their first son, Ibisu, became the god of fishermen, their daughter, Amaterasu, became the sun, and their second daughter, Tsukiyomi, became the moon. Their last son, Susanoo, became the god of storms due to his unruly behavior. Number 1. The Hindu Ohm. The Hindu also begin their stories with a featureless void, although apparently there was water in this void, and there was a giant cobra floating around in it. And inside this cobra was hidden Lord Vishnu. One day a sound came and filled the rather full void with energy. That sound was Ohm, now used as a Buddhist chant, so maybe I should pronounce it Om. Vishnu then awoke and set about doing his godly things. He first summoned his servant Brahma from the lotus flower on his belly button, better than a piercing, I suppose. Vishnu then told Brahma to create the world, and then he vanished, along with his servant. Brahma split the lotus flower into 3 bits. One part became the heavens, another from the earth, and the third and final bit became the skies. That's an awful lot of stuff from a belly button. Brahma then created birds, people, flowers, and every other living thing. So I sure hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below, and don't forget to subscribe. We've got brand new videos 7 days a week. If you're looking for something else to watch right now, why not check out my other channel, Biographics? It's biographies, as you might have guessed from the title, of notable people from history as well as the present day. You can find a link to that on the screen now. And as always, thank you for watching.